Have you ever felt like it might be too late to change something in your life? To pivot your career, to ask for what you're really worth, or to go after something you've secretly wanted for a long time? So many of us carry these invisible timelines around with us, these quiet beliefs that we should have it figured out, quote unquote, by now. But what if those timelines aren't real? What if they're self-imposed? What if the most powerful, expansive chapter of your life is actually in front of you, not behind you? Today's guest is going to teach you how to age into power, start trusting yourself more, and how to say yes to yourself, even when the world tells you no. Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Creative with Lauren LaGrasso. I'm Lauren LaGrasso, a 3-time Emmy Award-winning podcast host and producer, singer-songwriter, public speaker, and creative coach. This show is meant to give you tools to love, trust, and know yourself enough to claim your birthright to creativity and go after your wildest dreams. Before we get into the podcast, I want to remind you that I do creativity coaching and podcast consulting, and I would love to help you if you've got a project that you're trying to start, if you're trying to get over a creative block, or just if you need any help in putting your voice out into the world. So feel free to reach out. You can email me at lauren.lagrasso@gmail.com or go to my website, laurenlagrasso.com/contact, and we'll set up a free discovery call. Okay, now to the guest. She is Teri Weinberg, an Emmy Award-winning producer, former executive vice president of NBC Entertainment, and one of the creative forces behind some of the most iconic shows over the last few decades, including The Tudors, Ugly Betty, and my favorite show of all time, The Office. It was such a treat to get to talk to her about The Office. Oh my gosh, I can't wait for you to hear that part of the conversation. Beyond all that, Teri is a force and somebody who has busted open doors for herself and others. Case in point, she started producing in her 30s, learning how to surf in her 50s, and started public speaking for the first time in her 60s, and now has a thriving career in that area. This is a woman who knows how to say yes to herself and never believe in other people's limits for her or life in general. In this conversation, we talk about advocating for what you're worth, stepping into your power in rooms where you might feel like an outsider, the creative leadership lessons behind The Office, and why the energy behind a project matters just as much as what you're making, if not more, and how that came into play in The Office, and why life doesn't actually get smaller as we get older. It gets bigger, more expansive, and much more powerful. Okay, let's get into it. This is an amazing conversation. Here she is, the incredible Teri Weinberg. Teri, I am so thrilled to have you, one of the queens of creativity, on my podcast, Unleash Your Inner Creative. Thank you for being here today.
My God, I love you and I am so happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, the feeling is mutual. It's a love fest. And I love you because you not only have an incredibly creative career, but a creative life. And you're a great example of letting creativity be the filter for your life. So looking at that, I like to go back to go forward because I believe our creativity is deeply connected to the inner child.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, when you trace the lines of your life and look back to little Teri, what were the first signs or sparks of creativity?
When I had 2 older sisters. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. We lived in, it must have been a 1,500 square foot house. There were 5 of us, my parents and my 2 sisters. We had 1 bathroom and we had the most amazing pantry next to our very small kitchen. And I used to go into this pantry and hide and be creative. I would play school. I would do all the things that entertained me. And it was interesting because I love my older sisters, but it was something that I wanted to do by myself. I try to analyze that now that I'm an adult, but I just figured, hey, I loved playing. I loved imagination. I loved discovery. I loved all of those things about, learning and being creative. And so I think at a very young age, I was probably, 7 or 8 when I was doing that. And, I had the good fortune of being raised in a time, I'm 65. And I was raised in a time where, as kids, we just lived in the street. You came home from school, you went in the street. You had dinner, you went out in the street. I was playing ball with the guys. I was running around with my girlfriends. We would be out until everybody started screaming, get in the house, you have to go to school in the morning. And so it was such a formative time for me because I always felt like I was discovering things and playing And I wasn't in a room with a device alone outside of a world that wasn't real to me. My world was real. I was living it. I was present. And I think that part of my childhood taught me how to be present and to live and take advantage of those relationships that I had and the friends that I had and playing with those friends. And I think that that just carried on into my adulthood. Even when I had a full-time job, I always had something that I wanted to do. You know, I bead, I do all these kind of creative things on the side still. I'll make necklaces for my friends for birthdays, holidays, whatever. So I think that kind of creative streak, that part of me that always wanted to discover something and play, has stuck with me my whole life.
I love that. So much to break down. First of all, I don't know why. I did realize this when I watched a podcast you did earlier, but I didn't know you were a Midwesterner. I grew up in Detroit. So
you did?
Yeah. I think that there's something so special about the Midwestern spirit and the work ethic that instills in you, and then just the heart and warmth. So that makes a lot of sense to me that you have that Midwestern background. But something I picked up on is that you said you wanted to go into the pantry and kind of play and create and make these worlds alone. Do you find that through line, like in your creativity today too, that like at least the spark of creativity comes from time with yourself?
You know, that is such a good question, because I feel like, especially now that I'm writing and I'm doing things that are kind of outside of just producing and doing everything sort of by committee, and you're around, a million people, because, it takes a village to make television and movies. And I found mostly right when the pandemic happened that, my office used to be on the Universal lot. And so I was always around people, and there was always kind of noise and distraction. And when they shut the lot down and I started working in my home office, I thought, what am I going to do by myself? It's so quiet. I'm home. I've never worked from home. What is this going to feel like? And I think in that moment, it allowed me to take pause and to think and say, okay, what is my life? And I kind of like being by myself. I love my friends. I love my family. I love being in collaborations, but I never really took that kind of quiet time to just be in my brain and be creative and think for myself other than for others. And so I think it goes back to, I like to be in my office, shut the door. It's just me and my dog, and I'm thinking and I'm creating and I'm doing all those things. So I think that stays with me. And it also, I think, is a really important element, especially for women. And when we're not in a relationship per se. I happen to be lucky and I'm in a relationship for 24 years, but I loved being alone. I liked me. I liked being able to spend time with me, and that felt good. And so I think the more we're comfortable with ourselves creating or whatever it is we're doing, we're better for the outside world.
How has that time you've been spending alone and working at home and just hearing the sound of your own voice after being in those kind of committee creativity meetings for so long affected the way you show up as a creative in the world and just your creativity in general?
I think I'm better equipped. I think that I have had time to be in my imagination. We're always on a deadline. We always have something due. We always have a pitch. We always have somewhere we need to be. And that hasn't changed. But I think having gained back the time from not having to be in my car for 3 hours a day, and driving across town and just going from one studio to the next. And it's a gift and it's a blessing and I'm lucky. But I think having gotten that time back allows me to do my rituals in the morning, do my workouts, all of those things that prepare me for my day that I didn't really have the time for, quite a few years ago. So I feel more solid as a creative person. And I also feel like I'm seeing the world in a bigger way because I have time to go outside of what my maybe normal comfort zones were.
Yeah. That makes total sense. I think it's just as important to have that alone creative time as it is to have that collaboration time, as it is to rest, as it is to go out and get inspired. All of these things make a creative life. And when you do have all of them, you have the richest palette to draw from.
It's so true. And it takes us a lifetime, especially as women, to understand that. And part of us will understand it, but we won't actually live in it, or we won't actually execute on it. And that's what I love thinking about and talking about and writing about, is that life experience is a beautiful thing, and we're conditioned as young women to be in your youth and live your best life in your 20s and your 30s. And by the time you're 40, your life is over. And that is just couldn't be more wrong, because I think every decade we fall more inside our truth. We fall more inside our real true skin and feel more confident about everything that we're doing, because we start to trust ourselves more.
It's so true, Teri, because I really believe in getting younger with age. And I feel younger now than I did when I was 25, because when I was 25, I was putting so much pressure on myself. I was so constricted. I had nowhere to go. I felt elderly inside. Whereas now, like, I literally, when I got married and also when I got pregnant, I was like, am I too young to do this? I'm 37. Like, no, I'm fine. Like fully fledged, brain fully formed. I'm an adult. I'm a woman. But because I feel so youthful inside, that was a literal thought I had. And I think your life is such a brilliant example of not only never putting limits on yourself, but actually like expanding with age.
I mean, listen, I did my first triathlon at 55. I learned how to swim. I learned how to surf when I was 56, and I'm still in the water twice or three times a week. And I think if you put those restrictions on yourself and your growth and your play, and you think that your body is not capable, I actually feel like my body is stronger now than I could say in decades ago, because I am now really listening to it, and I feed it, and I move it in ways that I know are putting me in the position of my best health. And so you are so equipped. You're so smart, so beautiful, and so ready to be a mom. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
But I think that, like me, you're interested in things. You play, you live in a world that's all about creativity, because that's what you love, and that's a natural feeling for you. And so a lot of times we have to remind ourselves that we need to be creative and do things just for fun. And so I think as I have spent more time on earth, I've reminded myself that it's okay for you to surf on a Friday morning. It's okay for you to take an hour for you, because that's going to make you better in your day. I come out of that water, I feel completely rejuvenated. I feel like I've just accomplished something, just getting up on my board and riding a wave, or feeling the chill in my wetsuit. And I think when we remind ourselves that that play has a lot to do with the work, that they can be connected, because we feel so guilty to go have fun when we're trying to build a business, or we're new in a career, or we're trying to build, whatever it is. And no, I can't take time to do that. I need to get up. I've got to get on the calls. I've got to do this. I've got to do that, without realizing how much better we will be at executing those things in our career if we allow ourselves to stop and take pause and say, okay, what do I need today? Am I feeling courageous? Am I feeling disciplined? Am I feeling like I've given myself enough self-care to now go into a really long, hard day? And I think when you can have those conversations with yourself, you're just better at the work.
Well, I love what you're saying, because, the phrase I should say that came to mind is artificial limits. Like, we put these artificial limits on our life. Like, I can't do this because blah, blah, blah. But most of the time they're not actually real. Yeah. And so if there's somebody listening right now that is putting those kinds of limits on themselves, like, especially if it's due to their age, what would be your advice for them on a first step they could take to stop and then create a new belief?
One thing that I started doing about 10 years ago is really when I started a morning ritual. It's where I realized that I wasn't allowing my time to be in my thoughts. I wasn't sharing my gratitude every morning. I wasn't counting the blessings of everything that I had. And I surround myself by women and people who are 20 years younger than me. I live my life as if I'm in my 20s. I think we behave in a way that we treat ourselves in. Age is just a number. And I know it's a thing that people say, but it's true. One thing we can't stop is time. But one thing we can do is make the most of that time and continue to be our strongest versions in our bodies, in our minds, in our relationships. And I think it's really just shifting. It's just a tiny shift in perspective, in perspective and how we see the world. I wake up in pure gratitude and say, I woke up this morning. Now what? Now what am I doing? What doors am I breaking down? And I think it's just perception, and it's our points of view, and it's how we see ourselves. It's how we talk to ourselves. So it's just little simple steps of saying, of course I can do this, but what is that thing that's blocking me from doing it? Am I not surrounding myself with the people who are really supporting me, encouraging me, challenging me? I think it's all just there's so many incredible opportunities. It's just, are we willing to take them?
Yes, I love that. And I want to get into some of the amazing opportunities you've taken and created for yourself in your career, because you've had such an incredible career. You continue to expand and evolve and step out in new ways. But I know at the beginning of your career in Hollywood, you were an agent, right?
I was.
At ICM.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious about that phase of your career. And then also, I heard you talk about how it ended and how that was a real turning point for you. Would you just talk a little bit about that era and how it affected the rest of your journey?
Yes. So I actually started out as an assistant and then worked my way up the ranks over the course of 5 years, and then became an agent in television. And the best thing that I ever did was work at the agency, because it taught me what I really wanted to do. It gave me the opportunity to say, do I want to be an agent? Do I want to be a producer? Do I want to be a director, et cetera, et cetera? Because I was at ICM at the time, and every department was filled with movie stars and huge directors and writers. And I had that exposure. And I'd realized that when I finally became an agent, that was the least creative, the least interesting thing to me. And so I used that opportunity when I got fired to say, that door hit me in the back, mm-hmm. and I was walking out with my box, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I never turned around. I never turned around and looked at the door, looked at the building, looked at anything around me. I got my car, put that box in, and I drove off. And maybe that was shock, or maybe that was thank you for this gift, because I would have probably never left. And that was not the authentic trajectory of my life. And so I spent the next year, and this was 2000. So technology was really just starting to become a thing. There were stick figures online. There was no streaming media. All of that was just a conversation. And so I went to work at a management company that was all in technology for a year. And so I learned about all of the things that people started talking about 5 years later. So I added to my resume. So I came from talent. Now I understand technology. And I was then poached by Ben Silverman, who was at the time the head of international television at William Morris Endeavor. William Morris. And he said, I'm starting a production company and I want you to come work for me. And I said, I've never been a producer, but yes. And so and we'll go further past that path when we continue our conversation. But I felt like everything in my business life happened for a reason, for better or for worse.
I love it. And there's so many people who relate to your story of the way you left ICM. So many people are laid off right now. So many people are experiencing unemployment, trying to figure things out. How did you really learn to see that that was for you, that it was happening for you, that it was pushing you in the right direction, and not just internalize it as like, oh, I'm not good enough? Because I feel like so often, even when people are laid off from jobs that they really know aren't for them or are fired or whatever happens, there's still a feeling of like, I failed or I wasn't good enough. And that can get internalized. So how did you flip it around and turn that into power?
Well, I cried for 3 days and, kept saying to myself, why me? Why me? Why me? I was a hard worker. I was good at what I did. I just didn't understand it. And then I realized this is not about me. This is about whatever's happening in that agency has nothing to do with me. I just happen to be part of the fallout. And so what am I going to do now? Because you can sit here and wallow in the, I'm a failure. I got fired. I'm not worthy. I'll never get another job. Or you can wake up the next day and say, I'm going to use all those relationships I made. I'm going to make a list of all those people that I got to know. I'm going to reach out to any and everybody to let them know that I'm out there in the world looking for new opportunities and focus on what was ahead of me instead of what was behind me. And I know it sounds easy and it's not. It's changing the thought pattern in your mind of, okay, this, and it took me a while to realize, oh, that happened for a really good reason. Because I was too busy trying to figure out what the next thing was going to be for me. And I think it's just dusting yourself off, allowing yourself to have those moments, to have a good cry, to sit in a corner, to, if you drink wine, whatever the thing is that you feel like you need to do. And then you can pick yourself up and focus on what you have to do next and put all that good positive energy in front of you.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I think people get stuck because they don't let themselves go through the emotion. Like I like to throw myself on the ground and like have an actual tantrum when I'm really in the thick of things. And then when I'm done, I love finding solutions. Like the worst thing in the world is being in why and not looking for the answer to that question.
That's right.
And I think all the times I've suffered the most in my life have been when I've been stuck in why and not actually trying to answer why and then seek the like how,
That's right. And seek the for.
Yeah.
This is for me. I might not see it, might not see the forest through the trees, but I know there's a reason why. And I knew in my guts that I really wanted to be more creative. I just didn't know how. Yeah. And so I felt like if I sit down with everyone that I am in awe of, anybody that's ever inspired me, anybody that I had ever met in the agency, which it takes me to the point of make great relationships no matter what you do in your life, because those relationships will end up being the next step for you or the person that's going to help open another door for you. So, I spent a lot of time having these little 10-minute meetings. I would say, can I have 10 minutes of your time? Can I call you for 10 minutes? And in that 10 minutes that they gave me, I would ask them 3 questions, 3 of the most important things that I wanted to take away from that person that I was talking to. And at 9 minutes, I would set my timer and I would say, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And I was gone. And so I think if you can map out a thing that allows you to take advantage of the relationships, even if some people know you as an assistant or some people know you as a position where you feel like, well, I can't call that person. Yes, you can. What's the worst that can happen? They're not going to take your call. They're going to hang up on you. Neither one of those things. And you can even talk to that person's assistant. How'd you get that job? So it's finding ways and things that you think you might be interested in and reaching out to people, not being afraid. Hey, this is Teri Weinberg. I don't know if you remember me, but I met you from so-and-so's office. I would love if I could take you to coffee for 10 minutes. I'm at a place in my career where I'm just kind of trying to figure out what my next move is. And I've always respected what you do. Can I have 10 minutes of your time? You'd be shocked what you can learn in 10 minutes from 10 people.
With 3 good questions.
With 3 really good questions. Yeah.
Teri's just given us the guidebook, y'all. Go out, get your 10 minutes with 3 good questions. I love it. So you're now in this stage of your career where these connections you've made and relationships you've developed are starting to pay off in a different way, and you're stepping into the role of producer. What does that look like when you're learning how to produce on the job?
The most beautiful thing about becoming a producer was that Ben Silverman and the two other executives besides me, we were only a 4-person company with 1 or 2 assistants. None of us had ever produced before. We were all agents, but we all had a love of television. We all had a love of material. And Ben, he is an innovator. He's a brilliant human that just had a vision for this company. And he was one of the innovators that first started bringing formats into America. So The Biggest Loser, The Weakest Link, all of the huge unscripted shows, and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, big, successful shows. And so we started to get rights from British shows. One was a show called Coupling. The second one was a series called The Office. And the third was a Colombian series called Betty La Fea, or Betty the Ugly. And so Coupling was the first show that we produced and surrounded ourselves by people who had been doing it. A very experienced showrunner, put together an incredible writing staff, worked with our studio. And I will be honest, in that first year as we were developing Coupling, I kind of sat in the back and I just listened and I took notes. I noted everything. What does that mean? What does this mean? How do I break a script down? And I was just a listener. And that was the thing that changed the trajectory of my being a producer, because I learned so much by producing that show. It was a multicam comedy, but everything that I learned, I could then apply to this next show that we were going to produce. And I really had to just break through and have the courage to speak up in the room, to talk to the executives, to talk to the head of the studio. And so it was finding my courage and finding my strength and knowing that I could be in my power. But what I felt I needed to complete that was to have the experience and the information. So I gained the experience and the information so that I could be fully ready to step into that producer position.
I love so many aspects of that story, but one of them that I noted, you said we weren't producers. All of us were agents. And I think that, yes, obviously there are some disadvantages to not having been prior producers, but there's also a power in not having the limitations of being a producer, of being a seasoned producer. You go in and you have this fresh energy that maybe is needed to make something really special happen. What is the power of being an outsider?
It's so funny that you say that, because we always considered our company to be dangerous. We were just dangerous because we didn't know any different. We just did what we felt was right. We lived by, you could say fly by the seat of our pants. We did everything respectfully, but we were an outgoing phone call. People were not calling our production company to say, hey, we want you to produce shows. We were having to convince the community that we were a viable production company and that we had something to offer. But inside of that, we're super loose and also fun. We were having fun doing it. And you find that so many people live in fear, especially in entertainment, because they think if they just loosen up a little bit or have some fun or really enjoy what they're doing, that people are going to think they're not serious. And that's not true. You can have fun. You can be in the joy and you can be really good at what you do. So I think we were kind of the kids that came in and said, yeah, we got a show and this is what we're going to do, And so there's something that's incredibly joyful and liberating about that. I'm so glad you asked that question, because it's so right on. And it's, as you continue in your career, as I've been a producer for 25 years, I always try to keep that joy. I always said I'll stop being a producer if I don't learn something new every day and if I stop having fun. And I'm 25 years later. So it's just how you set yourself up and just stick to the things that feel good to you, but also do really good work.
That's a great criteria for anybody. Keep learning. As long as you're learning and you're having fun, you're probably on the right track. But if it starts feeling stagnant and you're graying out inside, that's when you know either the way you're doing it has to change or the thing you're doing has to change.
That's exactly right. It's a great thing to think about.
I do have follow-up questions I want to ask about that, but I also want to ask about something else you had said when you were talking about becoming a producer. You talked about finding your own power. What did that look like when you started to step into it, and how did you keep building it?
Well, first of all, I'm in a particular industry that is dominated by men. So almost 10 out of 10 meetings I was in, it was me and men. And so that was something that I had to contend with as someone who was already looked upon as, oh, here's the woman in the room. And, somebody once said to me, I came into a room, there were probably about 5 or 6 men in this room. And I came into the room with my boss, Ben Silverman, at the time. And Ben introduced me, and the guy said, oh my God, you're so pretty. And after the meeting, I pulled him aside and I said, don't ever say that to me again when we're in a room. I don't know you. And thank you for the compliment, but I'm not here to be pretty. I'm here because you're buying my brain. And I was very insulted by that. And that was a real call out moment for me. And I think my boss realized that too. He thought that he knew that, am I allowed to say the F word?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's go. Now I'm unleashing it. I just said, nobody will fucking ever treat me like that. And so I think that early on in my producerial career, I was kind of stiff in the back because I wanted to be treated like one of the boys. But I also had to be a woman that was in her power. So how did I do that? And it goes back to spending the first almost year of being a producer, listening and learning and gaining all that information so that when I walked in a room, I could become a part of that conversation. And then as time went on, then I started to lead those conversations because I felt like the more time and knowledge and experience that I had made me as qualified as anybody else in that room. And so why couldn't I lead the meeting? Why couldn't I lead the pitch? Why couldn't I be the one to step up and say, here's how we're going to do it? And so as we had a very, very full unscripted department. We had Biggest Loser on the air at the time. And as you may or may not know that show, it's a multi-billion-dollar gigantic international organism. So a lot of attention went to that show. And I went to my boss and I said, I can build your scripted television. I can build this part. Trust me. I can take the meetings. You don't have to be there. I can take the pitches. You don't have to be in every meeting anymore because we would go to all these meetings together. And then I knew that I could do this. And I said, let me do this. I know that I can take this pitch. You can go focus on building the international business. And that was a be careful what I asked for moment because I did take the next pitch and we ended up pitching the president of a network. And it was me starting the pitch. And if I tell you, I could feel the sweat coming off my palms. And it wasn't a perfect pitch, but I did it. And I felt so proud of me. And I thought, why was I so nervous? Nobody's ever is any smarter than me. And I know this material better than anybody. So it took time for me to step into that power. And it was a great learning experience. And I think it's just not being afraid and trusting that I had the skills to do it. And yeah, it's cool to go back and think about that. I see myself in that meeting pitching and thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do this? I did it. So I think it's trusting that we can take these chances. I think trusting that we're as good as the next person in the room. Nobody knows how much experience we have. Nobody knows where we come from. Nobody knows what anxiety, or nerves are happening inside of us. If we walk in, we feel confident, we're ready to go. Nobody knows, just you. And so if you talk to yourself in that way of course you can do this. Of course you understand it. Of course you're prepared. You're over prepared. Now just do the pitch. So it's taken a lot, but it's a beautiful thing to think back on and know that I've gotten through some really hard learning curves.
I love that too, because, it's really like the thing you were just saying is basically taking the voice, if you have an inner critic voice, and instead of letting that take you down, be your own inner advocate and point out what you can do and what you do believe in yourself. And then that voice will start to be the one that speaks out and advocates for yourself to have those opportunities to pitch, to lead a department. I love that. I want to go back to the thing we were talking about before, which I really believe the energy behind something is just as important as the thing you're making, if not more. And when I think of this, I really think of The Office. Outside of things that I have been directly involved with and that I have built myself or been a part of myself, I don't think that there is any other piece of art in the world that has more profoundly affected my life and my being, my creativity, everything about me than this show. It got me through the most difficult moments of my life. It has instructed my humor, the way I approach my leadership, just because of things I've heard about how you all ran this show. And so I wonder, when you think about this concept that the energy behind something is just as important as the thing you're making, if not more, how did that manifest in The Office?
It starts from the top. Greg Daniels, this is a brilliant human. He is one of the kindest people that I know, and he brings no ego to anything that he does. And he attracts those same kind of people. And I think we all went into it knowing we might not do more than 5 episodes. The network doesn't love us. They don't really understand us yet. We're doing a whole new kind of way that you see characters on television. They're talking to a camera. There's just a different comedic rhythm to it. So let's just do this. Let's create a family. Let's find people who are going to have as much fun and joy and revere the original version. By the way, Steve Carell had never seen the original, so everything that Steve brought was just Steve. But let's just have fun. And so we said, if we're going to do 5 episodes, which our first order was only 6 episodes, a pilot and 5, let's just do the best 5 episodes we know how to do. And everybody would show up every single day with the biggest smiles, the most enthusiasm. And I think about The Office like this thing that Tom Brady said once. He said, you have a football team and everybody shows up and they have a job to do. If everybody steps into their position and they give 100% in that position, think about what you're going to make. Everybody was important to us. Greg used to actually show cuts of episodes to our accounting people, to our catering people. Everybody mattered on our show. So it was going to work and being with family and the chills and the times that I was on set all day, every day, and just sitting in the green room and hearing the talking heads or seeing what was happening in the room and then running into the room when they would call cut and just hugging everybody and laughing and knowing that we were doing something that was so wildly original, but was also so human and something that we knew that we had a responsibility to just throw as much joy out into the world as we could, whether it was love and hate in that room, whether it was, because everybody can relate to what it means to be locked in a day job from 9 to 5. You want to love people, you want to hang them, you want to prank them, you want to do all those things. And it just came from a really pure place. And that was our hearts.
I just think you can so feel that when you watch it. Obviously, it's a brilliant show. There's no denying it. But it's not just that, because there are other shows that are brilliant and interesting. There's a reason I've literally rewatched it 20 times, and I will just put it on and let it play. And something about hearing the voices soothes my nervous system. And I really believe it was a show built on the foundation of love. And that's kind of rare in this town. Hate to say it, but it is. And I can feel the respect that there was. I mean, even the way that I've learned about how Greg Daniels led and how he allowed everybody to explore their creativity and their passions and not just restricting them to like, well, you're this for, you came in as a writer, so you can only write. I think that is so beautiful. And it's so rare in Hollywood, in corporate environments, to allow somebody to share what their dreams are outside of the specific role they've been hired for and experiment with that. And I just wonder about that piece of the leadership, because I think that is such a thing that everybody can learn from. Like when I do hire a role, I try to ask somebody, what is your dream? And I try to, even if I'm hiring them for something different, get them closer to their dream through the job. How did that kind of leadership affect people on set and make for a better product?
I think it's simple. I think we all just want to be seen. I think we all want to know that we're contributing. I think we all want to know that we're a part of something that we all believe is really special. And without us, we're not a whole functioning mechanism. I mean, we all ate lunch together, cast, crew, everybody. I mean, we had a gigantic warehouse that we would just sit on endless long tables, and you would just see people from totally different departments sharing lunch and food and all the things. And if I say that it was really just, we treated each other like we were family. There were no delineations. There were no, only cast can go here and only crew can be here and nobody's allowed here and nobody's allowed there. It just felt like it was an open invitation for people to play. And Greg in particular was that guy. He always says, I just want to play. I spent countless millions of hours in editing with him because it was so fun. He'd lay on the floor. His position was lay on the floor and think, and I'd lay on the couch and we'd have these lofty conversations while the editor was editing. And it's amazing what you can discover when you just connect with different kinds of people from different worlds at different places. There were people who got engaged, had babies, got divorced, lost loved ones. We all experienced real life together for 10 years, and it just further solidified the relationships that we had. So I think leadership, which is something that I think is really important when I think about myself as a leader, and I think as women, and I see this so much in you, is that there's no ego, for starters, and there's empathy. We have to understand that everybody's going through something that we might not know about. So if somebody comes to work in a day and you're wide-eyed and open and know that person well enough to know if something doesn't feel right, and it feels, so take them aside. You good? You having a good day? I think, again, it goes back to people just wanting to be seen and feel like they are a part of something and they have value.
It's so beautiful. I can never thank you enough for fighting for that show, for being a part of that beautiful foundation of love that it was built upon. And just being its advocate, because I literally cannot imagine my life or the world without it. Like I don't get emotional like this over TV shows, but it's not just a TV show. Like I literally look at it as a healing body out in the world. And I can never thank you enough.
You know why? Because it healed our bodies. It healed us, and everybody was able to see a little bit of themselves in a character or in the world. And I think if you can put so much of yourself into your work that it just comes through, you hope that it just blasts through the screen. There were, I'm sure you remember the dinner party episode where we're at Michael Scott's house and he's got a flat screen that's this big. If I tell you, it probably took us, and normally our days were short, 8 to 10 hours, because everybody was just so good. So it took 12 hours I mean, we could not get through that thing because it was so crazy funny. And that's part of the play,
Yeah.
and you can feel the actors playing and having fun and coming through. And I think that that's why it feels like they're part of you, because they probably had experienced something that you'd experienced, but they're there to be your friends.
It's so true. And just even the way you all explored being an artist and being a creative person working within a corporate environment, because you still were doing that. You were working for a huge corporation in NBC. One of my absolute favorite episodes is the one where they make the commercial for, because it's like, wow, you found a way to talk about all the guardrails and restraints on creative people and the way that a corporation can really crush creativity, and like the way that they just say no instead of yes and how much that limits its employees, and like also just feeling crushed creatively in an environment where like there actually is space for creativity. I just think it's brilliant the way like you found a way to like share the plight of being an artist through what people would consider a non-creative career, which is working in an office, even though I think everything is creative. So there's just so many, like I always say, the office teaches me every lesson I need to know about life. It's true. Like it's really taught me how to be more human, how to be a better artist, how to be a better leader. Like it is in every inch of my life and what I do. And so I can just never thank you enough for fighting for that, for being a part of the heartbeat of the show. And I think you're an amazing human and artist.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, listen, I'm just one of many hundreds, but to know that it's touched you in that way and it continues to bring in new generations of people. Young kids. I'm a hit at bar mitzvahs, I will tell you. These young kids. We always knew that we had kind of a hidden demographic because when you're network television, you never look at 18 or under. That's not how it, success is gauged. But we're seeing that young kids continue to discover the show now. And it's so cool that, 20 some years later, we're still a big hit in young people's eyes, and that parents can now watch it with their kids and replay it while their kids are discovering it. And that's an incredibly cool thing.
I can't wait to watch it with my child someday. I just realized I'm going to get to do that.
I'm crying a little now. As soon as I said you can watch it with your kids, I knew that you were going to start crying.
That's going to be the best.
I
can't wait. I'm going to do it when they're 3, though. I'm not going to wait.
Yeah. No, you're cool.
Start them young. So Teri, you were doing all these incredible creative things. You're in these like badass power roles at NBC. You were a VP, like a big exec there. And then I know at a certain point you left and did your own thing. And I think that is so incredible. I think being an entrepreneur is one of the greatest gifts of life. It's also a challenge because when you're known as being Teri at NBC or Teri with this like huge show, and then you're going off on your own, there's a transition period. How did you go from being Teri at NBC to Teri, the entrepreneur and independent producer, and take your power with you?
So I'll do you one better. Yes. So I was the executive vice president of Primetime. So I ran the network on the creative side. So I was the number 2 at the network. It was a huge job. It was incredibly public. It was like living in a vice in a pressure cooker. For 4 years, I slept between midnight and 3 o'clock, probably 3 or 4 hours a night. I was fired. I didn't leave. And it was a time where there was a great deal of disruption at the network, and I was a fallout from that. And so when this was told to me, I couldn't figure out why I was going to be the one to lose my job because of someone else's inadequacies, and had those conversations and because I was good at what I did. And so inside that conversation, I turned something that could have been career ending into career beginning. So I said, okay, so if this is going to be my exit, then I want to deal with the network. I want to create my own production company. I want to make a deal right now before all of this goes down, and I will start my own company under the NBC and NBC Universal banner. And that's what I'm asking for. And I just was not going to take no for an answer. And I didn't. And so I left that job and had a 2-year overall deal with NBC, the network, and started to build my own company. And because they gave me a development deal, I was able to build on my financial wealth. And if that deal didn't go more than 2 years, which it ended up not, because it's very hard to run a broadcast network and then pitch to the people that used to work for you. So that was a very strange kind of thing to navigate. But I still had a lot of fun knowing that it was my name on the masthead, coming out of a very big job, saving a lot of face, and being able to say, oh, yeah, no, I'm starting my own business. Now I'm betting on me. All this energy, time, hard work that I put into everyone else's business is now going to go into mine. So I turned something that was very public and very hard for me, because I was headlines of all the, Variety, Reporter, Deadline, all those things. And you're out in the world feeling so much shame and so much, it was so hard. I was so heartbroken for a couple of days, but I knew on the other side that this big announcement was going to come out that I was starting my own company. And so again, that was just kind of how I had to shift. I'm a loser. I'm a failure. I'm all those things to, but I'm going to capitalize on this. I'm going to make the best out of this. And I did.
I love that you're like, I was so sad for a couple of days, as if it's like this great length of time, but I think it just goes to show your resilience and your tenacity and belief in yourself. This is an incredible story of negotiating and advocating for yourself. And 100%. I think most people in this position, and I've been in this position before, and like kind of walked away with my tail between my legs instead of being like, what can I do with this? What, first of all, are your negotiation tips? And like, how can we just be more like you? I guess that's what I want to ask.
You know what it is? It goes back to, you have nothing to lose. You have all to gain. If you don't ask the question, you'll never get the answer. And I think you just got to dare to have the balls to say, fuck it. I've earned this. I belong here just like anybody else. So I'm going to just ask it. I'm going to say it. I'm going to demand it. And, producers we're there to get the yes. I am built to get the yes. I am not built to take a no. And so I think it's part of my infrastructure that if I hear no the first time, I have to figure out how that no becomes a yes. And what do I need to do to get that no to get me closer to that yes? And so they say no, then I'll say, well, okay, so let's look at it this way. Okay, well, let's look at it this way. Well, how about we try this until you see that arrow going closer to that yes, until you know you're going to feel that. I'm going to get there, and I'm going to do everything I can to get to that yes. Does that mean I'm going to always get it? No, but I'm going to leave everything on the table that I have to get that yes, because even if I don't get that yes I was looking for, maybe I've gotten halfway there and I've gotten parts of what I'm looking for. So especially for people who are newer in their careers, whatever they are, I think we feel like we're not worthy of asking for the raise, and we feel like we don't know enough, or we haven't done it enough, or, we're too afraid to ask. Ask. What is the worst that's going to happen? Thank you for asking. We're not ready to give you that raise, but we'll put it in your file. I'll think about it. And so that somebody has the character and the trust and the courage to do that, and that they're ready to take on a bigger role. A lot of times we think people are just going to notice us. Oh, she's great. I'm going to give her a raise. Oh, she's great. I'm going to make her an executive vice president. You have to go get those things. You have to ask for those things, and so my best advice is to trust that you will get that yes, And in your mind, say, I'm not going to stop until I do.
Brilliant. Yeah, the thing that I keep saying to my listeners and to myself is we don't say no to ourselves. The world might say no to us. And even then, to your point, it's not really a no. It's just a how can we make this work? But I'm not going to say no to myself because then I've already lost.
That's right.
And I love that. Another amazing thing you talk about is women and money and asking for what you're worth. I know that we could probably have an entire 3-hour long conversation just about this, but do you have any hot tips on how to start getting more comfortable with just saying your rate without emotion, just putting it out there?
Say your rate, put it out there. Decide what you know you are worth, do the work and find out, what is commensurate in the job that you're in or in the job that you're seeking. So do that research and see, well, if it's between this number and this number, I'm going to ask for this number because or I'm going to go above that number, knowing that I'm within the realm of what that position is kind of, commensurate in the marketplace. So I would do research to see what that position was paying. Now, if I feel overqualified for that job, but it's a really important step in my career, I'll still ask for more money. And, listen, don't ever negotiate against yourself. Because if you do that, like you said, you're already dead in the water. So let's say $50,000 is the number. And that's what you're hoping for. Ask for 75. Ask for 100 to get to 75. So always ask for the number that is above the number that you really hope to land at. And if it's 50 and you land at 49, you win. So it's always ask for more than you know what that position is offering or has offered based on your research, and ask for more so you can end up at that number. And I think people are afraid because they think that it's going to stop the negotiation, or they're going to be frowned upon if they're asking for a raise in their company, or they're going to get fired. Okay, if they fire you for asking for a raise, if they don't hire you because you're asking you for what you're worth, then those are two places that you don't belong in. That they're answering the question for you because you want to be working in a company that knows that they are nurturing you to become more than you are and giving you an opportunity for success and paying you what you're worth. End of story. Because one door that closes, another one's opening.
So true. We always make it so personal and about us and oh, I shouldn't have done that. But it really is just giving you information. And I love your approach to taking the emotion out of it because I think it really does help. Going back to aging into power, you started speaking for the first time in your 60s. You're a badass keynote speaker. Everybody go check out her TED Talk. Talk to me about this creative reinvention and what you're doing with your speaking career.
Okay, so when the writer's strike happened a couple and a half years ago, our industry went quiet, which means you can't work, you can't develop, can't work with writers. The business essentially stops. And I was doing my research and was learning that this was going to be a long strike. It was going to be anywhere from 6 to 8 months. It was a big, really hard negotiation. And so I thought, what am I going to do for 6 or 8 months if I can't produce? And I just started reading. I was doing things that I never had time to do because I was so busy just working. So I just I was still for a moment. And the day after the strike was announced, I sat down at my computer and I started just writing my story. I don't know what hit me, but for the longest time, I wanted to be able to share my experience, especially with other women in the industry or the new generation of up and coming executives. And so I never put pen to paper. I've given a million notes. I have been behind the camera for 25 years. I have listened to keynotes. I have been to every possible panel you can imagine. And I've spoken on a few panels and done some things in my industry. certainly, especially when I was at NBC, but I never stood at a microphone and told my own story. I never sat down at a keyboard and started to talk about my experience in an industry or my life, as a Midwestern girl to end up here in Disneyland, and so I kind of self-taught. I just kept writing and writing and writing. And I realized that I had something to say and I had something to share. And I didn't really have a lot of mentors coming up. I maybe had one or two. And so I really navigated alone or by osmosis, just listening and observing other people. And I just kept thinking, but what if I could be one of those people? What if I could help young executives or women coming up and dealing with relationships or business or, being in the corporate environment or really just stepping into what I know my power to be now earlier in my life and knowing that you essentially have a person holding out their hand saying, I got you. And I'm gonna pull you through, and that thing just kept tugging at me. And as I was writing and deciding, okay, I'm going to write a book, I got called by someone who was producing the TED Talk. And they had said to me, I saw you speak on a panel. Have you ever thought about doing a TED Talk? And I was on the phone with him and I panicked and I said, no, I've never thought about it. And yes, I will. And I couldn't even imagine what was coming out of my face. And so right there and then I committed to doing it. And I had to do one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And that was stand in front of the world for 13 minutes and tell my story. And what was that going to look like? And I had to figure it out in 6 weeks. And I had to memorize it. And I had to be me. And I had to do all those things that you think about when you have to stand up in front of not only a group, but that the camera that's on you is projecting you to the entire world that lives there forever. So it was the most cool thing I've ever done. It was the scariest thing I've ever done. And it was the most liberating thing that I've ever done. And that just kind of opened the door to, oh, you've got so much more to talk about, which took me to more panels, which is taking me to more keynoting, to more writing. And so while I'm over here producing and doing what I do every day, in between that is taking time to sit on a panel, traveling to do keynotes, and then continuing to write and mentor.
And let me just say, watch this. We'll put it in the show notes. But Teri looks like she's been literally speaking and performing her entire life in this TED. Like I would literally never know it was because I've seen a decent amount of TEDx talks. And a lot of times it's speakers' first time talking. And you can sometimes kind of tell. Teri, it was like, oh, there's a goddess on the stage. And she's like pulling in both the power from the earth and the power from the heavens. And then it's coming out of her mouth. And like, it really, you have to watch this because it's just such a lesson in saying yes before you feel ready. And then taking everything you've ever done, everything you've ever been, everything you've ever learned, and just putting it into whatever that thing is, that creative outlet you're doing. I know, and you mentioned this briefly, you've written a book. Mm-hmm. And you're shopping it around. How is that going? And like, is there any update on that and when we can expect it?
Yes. The thing that I'm learning about the book world, which you certainly know better than I, is it's a really slow process. They move wildly slow. So you'll get yes, we're still considering, but give us another month. Yes, we're still considering, but we need another this. And so my book has been in the hands of about 16 publishers for about 6 months. And in the meantime, I was thinking about what can I do while this is kind of over here simmering? And I've been thinking a lot about, I just did a conversation with someone about putting our power into practice and what does that look like? And I decided to create what I'm calling a manifesto, the power of, putting our power into practice. And what does that mean? And I want it to be 25-page, soft cover, little thing that you can shove in your purse, put on your nightstand, put on your desk. And you get up one morning and you think, God, I just can't get it together. Pick up that thing and go to the discipline section. I'm not feeling really good about myself this morning. What's wrong with me? Did I sleep not well? Go to that self-love section. So I've created sections of what it means, especially as women, to step into all these elements of our power and how I'm reminding the reader that the power's there. It's just, I'm helping you kind of get back to it if you feel like you have a particular block. So I'm starting rituals, talk about the body, talk about discipline, talk about our desires, talk about our visibility and our strength, and talking about how we must self-love first and foremost. And so it's been really fun to do that. So I think I'm going to self-publish it. And I think I'm going to do the audiobook, but it's going to be little. I want it to be a small little kind of Bible. And it's as if you're calling me and saying, Teri, what the fuck is happening to me today? You can just pick up your book and I'm writing it in my voice like I speak, and just reminding anyone who picks that book up that they're worthy, that they're smart, that they deserve to be where they are. They deserve to level up, and they deserve love, whatever that looks like to them. And it has to start right here.
Well, I can't wait. I will be one of your very first customers because I want the Teri Book of Power. I want to be able to access you in the middle of the night when I wake up and I'm like, what am I doing with my life?
There she is. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
But you are the most amazing human. I love your generosity of spirit, your kindness, your power, your warmth, your strength. You are all things. And I just love how you've reinvented yourself so many times and kept all the other pieces, but never told yourself, I have to live within this limitation. I think it's a great example for anyone, especially women who are creative or in the entertainment industry, on not putting limits on ourselves, on believing in the most expansive version of ourselves. And if you keep believing, other people will too. So thank you for what you do, but most importantly, thank you for being who you are and for this precious time we got to share today. I love you.
Oh my God, honey, I love you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inspiring me. I'm just as lucky to have you in my life. And I love spending time with you. So it's absolutely my gift and my pleasure.
Well, you're the best. And thank you for being with my creative cuties. There you have it, my conversation with the amazing Teri Weinberg. One of the things I love the most about Teri's story is the way she reminds us our lives don't get smaller as we get older. If anything, we age into power. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from this conversation for me too is don't say no to yourself. Don't shut the door on yourself. Never assume it's too late or that you've missed your moment or that a no is a no forever. It's just a no for now or a not like that, but how about like this? So don't ever be afraid to advocate for yourself and your own dreams. Teri's life story is a great example of that. You can find Teri and learn more about her work at her website, teriweinbergspeaker.com. You can follow her on Instagram at Teri Weinberg and check out her amazing Substack, herrevolutionnow.substack.com. And as always, if this episode resonated with you, I would love it if you would share it with a fellow creative who needs it right now. Make sure to follow, subscribe, rate, review, do all the things. Those ratings and reviews really make a big difference. So if you haven't left one, be sure to do that. Comment on Spotify and follow us on socials at Unleash Your Inner Creative, at Lauren LaGrasso, and check us out on YouTube. We also have a video podcast there if you're listening right now. Unleash Your Inner Creative is hosted and executive produced by me, Lauren LaGrasso. It's edited by Blondell Garcon. I love you and I believe in you. Talk with you next week.